because the recording process of Rose was a little messy and difficult, let's say. And so my memories of that album, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, and I
Oh,
am
okay,
recording.
okay.
I just
I
started
see,
the
I see. Yeah, okay. So the recording process was a little difficult and kind of all over the place. And it was my first recording I did with a producer. So I was nervous and it was a new experience. And so I think from my point of view, my performance could have been better. I think for the listeners, it doesn't matter or they don't realize.
no.
But so I have a personal view on my performance and the quality of my performance and singing, and so that leads to my how do you say, estimation. I mean, yeah, as I said, it's long ago, and I was young and foolish and not experienced in the studio. So I suppose that my current newer records sound more mature and um, more versatile. No, not versatile. What's the word? See, now that you record, I suddenly mind my words and think of how my English is and my vocabulary
Oh,
and so on.
it's great.
Anyway,
It's
but I
great.
mean,
Don't worry
yeah.
about that.
So there are albums where the recording process is controlled, if you will, and you feel on top of your game, and albums where you feel like you're drowning in a sense in an ocean, and it's mayhem in a way, and the producer says no, it's fine, and you think like, oh no, I'm not capable of doing what I want to do, and my voice is not working. I'm not in voice. I mean, I'm rarely in voice when I have to sing in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why when I did my last two albums, I recorded the vocals at home. I mean, with professional equipment, of course, but I recorded it at home over the, uh, how do you say, over the expense? No, over the span of a couple of months, even, so that it was no real pressure. Like in the studio, you have 12 songs, you have 2 weeks for the vocal recordings, and I mean, I used to do that in the past, and I was never really happy with the result because it seemed rushed. And so the last two albums I did myself, I recorded myself, the vocals, and I edited my vocals. So I had total control. And so let's say that every word there is how I want it to be, if you will.
Right. And like you said, going back, you said you had complete control. I'm sure that's something that a lot of artists that nowadays, especially that can, record at home, have their own studio or own setup, enjoy that, that kind of control. And like you said, not having the time, constraint of having, in a studio with a producer and that kind of thing. I can imagine that would work.
But of course, what a producer does, especially this producer youth, this English guy, Martin Glover, who did the urban hymns by The Verve, for example, and The Fireman with Paul McCartney and so on. So he's an established producer who worked with me, and he knew all the what was going on with the I don't know, with the diva, with the fussy artist, and so he always threw me into the cold water. I don't know if that you use that term in English. So he said,
Yeah.
oh, I know what your head games, but screw that and just start. And so he challenged me. So a producer actually should do that. But I suppose some artists like that a producer leads them and pushes them and throws them into new regions um, and where the artist doesn't have the control. But I mean, I have to say, I mean, Mirage of Bliss, that's the album I did with Youth. I think it's well liked by many people. I think my most well-known song, The Whereabouts of Love, is from that album. And so people are happy with the result. But I remember these recording sessions as similar to the Rose ones, where I felt I didn't have control. And so I felt lost, and I was struggling every day. I mean, it was 12 songs within 14 days.
Wow.
And so one song a day. And to this day, I don't know how I made this, because I was not invoiced, meaning that I was, I mean, it doesn't mean that I was hoarse, or how do you say, but that my voice wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. So the comparison is, you are a craftsman, how do you say, and you're supposed to, you have a hammer, no, you have a nail, but you don't have a hammer, and you push the nail with your fist as opposed to with the hammer. So that's the feeling of being in the studio, not being in voice, but having to record an album.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just recordings. You have to function, and if you don't, then you don't. Maybe your career is over. That's the pressure of the recording artist, of course. I mean, of many people in many
Right.
jobs, of course.
Well,
But it's
well,
like, if, yeah.
oh, I was going to say, let me say this. If you weren't in voice, it doesn't come across that way on the album. It's beautiful. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the vocals, every song. So if you weren't, or you, I know a lot of artists are very self-critical. You know, I know that. They always feel like they can be better or do better. Um, and you know, a lot of the fans or the people that listen to the music don't see it that way. You know, because they're not the ones that are actually producing the product. So
Yeah,
um,
I mean, but not being in voice doesn't mean that the result is a bad one, but it means that it takes longer time, and it's a lot of frustration until you actually kind of reach the goal. So, I mean, let's say you have 30 takes and you are still frustrated, but at some point things seem to work and the result is not bad. But of course, you know, there are days when you do this in 2 takes, and it's very easy, and um, you can do better, and the voice, you have much better days. So you think, why can't I have a good day on the day of the recording? So that's, you compare with you being at your best. So it's not, and that's, I mean, in many situations people are confronted with that. I mean, in many jobs, you know. So you talk to your boss, and you're very vocal, and at that day you feel intimidated, and then later you think, oh, I should have said that and that. So I mean, of course, it's that's life. But by the way, I saw on your website that you interviewed Ken Sweeney,
yes, yes.
right? So, and Ken Sweeney did a fantastic radio documentary about my favorite band, the Blue Nile.
Okay, okay, right, right.
And Paul
I was
Buchanan
going
is
to
a,
ask you about your influences too. We can get to that, but about other bands that you
yeah,
enjoy.
um, yeah. Paul Buchanan is a good example, because he is some sort of a good ghost for me, of some kind of role model. Because I always dream of that people perceive my singing, my vocals, similar to how I perceive or judge his vocals. Because especially nowadays, he did this solo record in 2012, Mid-Air. I don't know if you know that one or not.
I'm not familiar with that one, no. But
And
I
so,
have a lot of the Blue Nile. I mean, I have three or four of their CDs. Yeah, so
yeah,
there's with the band.
and Blue Nile, Paul Buchanan is perhaps, I don't know, 55 or something like that. So his voice is a little, has become a little, has suffered a bit. I mean, it's an older voice now. And there are songs where you know, he doesn't really hit the notes precisely, or his voice is very husky at times, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't give a shit if it's in tune or not, if he reaches the pitch or not, because every word is passion and truth. I don't know. There's so much emotion or passion or truth behind his singing that it doesn't matter what he actually sings and how he sings it. So and I would love to, because I think when I'm not in voice and when I do a sloppy take, that this is shit and this is the proof that I'm a bad singer. But perhaps to other people, it's no, that's reality. It's not a produced vocal take. This is your real life voice. This is your human voice, so to speak. And that's why I love your vocals, because they are human. And I think singers always want to sound perfect because they're afraid that once they show humanity, as there's a certain weakness or dark side that is suddenly out there, and people realize this is not a hero, this is a loser, so to speak.
Well, that's what I enjoy about at least the first two albums that I've heard, and I will catch up. I will go back and listen to your newer material. I promise. But that's what I enjoy, is that you're vulnerable, and it comes across in your music. Even weakness, but there's strength in that weakness, and I'm sure you can relate to that. And that's what I think people really, tap into with the music that I listen to and that I enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I hope that people see in my music, my vocals, this vulnerability that, for example, I love when listening to the Blue Nile or Paul Buchanan, that I love his failure, so to speak, because Paul Buchanan is, somebody said he's a crooner rather than a singer, and he is struggling sometimes to reach the notes, and we love his struggle. And he probably thinks, oh my God, people hear that I'm struggling to hit the high note, and we think, yeah, that's where the magic is in your struggling. But I mean, I suppose few people want to struggle. I mean, if you're a I don't know, he's a sportsman, or you want to run like you fly and not struggle. But when a singer wants to sing like George Michael, or I mean, these singers who I dream of having voices like George Michael, or what's this other, Harry Nilsson, those singers with these angelic voices, and who seem to, where every note seems to come out like very easily and no struggle at all. But I mean, who knows what is what's this guy who sings with no when I need Leo Sayer. It's another voice. I think, oh my God, if I wished I had this high male voice, because my voice is when I sing, mostly it's a falsetto.
Right.
And my speaking voice, my singing voice should be la da da, this kind of thing. So I have a low male voice. And for example, people like Leo Sayer have high male voices. And I always dream of having this kind of voice. I mean, I should sing like Leonard Cohen, Suzanne, human. But falsetto means false. You know what I mean? It's not it's not a. I mean, it comes from a Latin word, I suppose, false. So it means that it's not the real voice, but it's a fake voice in a way. I mean, of course, you use it, and musicians use it.
But you're comfortable with that voice. You're comfortable.
Yeah, more or less. But it's not my real voice. My real voice is, as I said, Suzanne takes you down the river. That's how I should sing. And for example, if you ask Tom York or Leo Sayer, they would never be able to do this stuff because their voice like this.
Right.
So
But
they start at a different point. So when they do their falsetto, they go much higher, and they a lot of the notes that I do in falsetto, they do with their real chest voices, and I adore that, and I dream of anyway.
let me say, especially on Rose, I don't think a deeper voice would work with the music.
Yeah.
I think your voice is perfect for the material. So, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I don't think in that aspect or that respect that a deeper voice would work. But let me throw another name out there.
Yeah.
You familiar with Colin Blunstone?
No.
Oh, that's who you reminded me of mostly. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, okay, how about the Zombies?
Is the Irish band?
No,
Oh, no. Okay,
I'm
that's
dating,
they have a
I'm
song
dating,
called Zombies.
I'm
No,
dating, I'm dating myself here a little bit. I'm a little bit older than you. This was a '60s band. Okay, Time of the Season. Remember Time of the Season?
no.
Oh, wow, wow. Okay, we got a generation gap. We got a generation gap going on. No, really, if you go and listen to some Zombies, um, just you can just look it up on YouTube and listen to some of their
Yeah,
material.
yeah.
Colin Blunstone, Colin. Colin. It's a British
Mm-hmm.
band from early '60s to late '60s. They had a classic album, Odyssey and Oracle. Odyssey and
Mm-hmm.
Oracle. Very Baroque sounding. Rod Argent was also in the band, and he formed his own band, Argent, in the '70s. And then Colin Blunstone released a couple of solo albums. But his breathy vocals
Mm-hmm.
remind me a lot of yours. So
Okay, I see.
check
Yeah,
check out and see what you think.
I will. Yeah, but my influences. Um, my first great love, or how do you say, my first musical great love is an American singer, Melanie Safka.
Oh, Melanie. Yeah, that
Yeah,
just went by me.
right,
Yeah,
right.
yes.
So my father had her greatest hits as a cassette, and I listened to it over and over again as a 4-year-old. That's when I started to listen to music, and only when I was 7, I discovered the Beatles. But I listened as a really young kid to Melanie, and so I think my greatest influence might be her, and she's an absolutely fantastic singer. I mean, and so it started with Melanie, then the Beatles, and then let's say the record collection of my parents, so to speak, like Leonard Cohen, Simon and Garfunkel, and Cat Stevens, stuff like that. And so I listened to this 60s and 70s music when everybody else at school kind of ridiculed me and laughed at me because they listened to the 80s stuff, which was the current music. And only I think in the 90s I started to listen to contemporary music. No, I forgot something. Okay, so this the 70s stuff, and then when I discovered, I don't know, girls, if you will, or when I was 13 and starting to get interested in the other sex, then we had those parties, and then I discovered the slow dance stuff, like these ballads, "Hello" and "Without You," and um, these songs, these power ballads of the 70s and 80s, or Mandy by Barry Manilow, this kind of stuff. And that influenced me very much, this kind of heartfelt love songs, great love songs. I mean, for example, "Without You," I mean, the performance of this song and the song itself, and then Lionel Richie and so on, absolutely fantastic. And then I had a Christa Berg phase, and Christa Berg is, I mean, people ridicule him, which do you know Christa Berg, I suppose?
Yeah, yes.
So I mean, people underestimate him because he did a great singer-songwriter stuff in the 70s. So I had a Christa Berg phase, and then at some point it made click, and I started to listen to Oasis and Radiohead, and that was when I started to listen to contemporary music.
Okay.
And it was, yeah, Britpop, if you will, and on the other hand, Nirvana, and then NoFX and Beck, and I mean this kind of grunge mid-90s stuff. And
see, I was never into the grungy stuff. I've always liked the prettier, the more melodic type. That's what drew me to you immediately, you know.
Yeah, and so I mean it was these kind of opposites, if you will. So the heavy stuff, which so you're young, you're in puberty, and you have these, you listen to these Nirvana songs, and you suddenly think, oh, that speaks to me too, like the Love songs do still. And I mean, Rage Against the Machine, their first album is absolute classic. So this kind of stuff against the gloomy, moody singer-songwriter stuff. And I never, I mean, I always changed between both of them. And then I discovered that there's bands who combine it. Do you know Choke Bar, an LA band?
No, haven't heard of them.
And Choke Bar, they
recent
sorry?
band? Is it a recent band or
No, I mean they are formed in the 90s and lasted for 10 or 15 years. And for example, these bands who have melodic stuff mixed with certainly heavy guitars. I mean, let's say Smashing Pumpkins, a little similar.
What about Concrete Blonde? Concrete Blonde.
I don't know.
Yeah, they were an LA band, and they mixed kind of the hard with the melodic. Yeah, that's one to check in.
And yeah, I mean that's I think that's my major influences. And then of course later, I mean, I don't know. Okay, then this lasted for a while, and then I had this epiphany, so to speak, when I suddenly started listening to Bob Dylan. So it was I don't know, 15 years ago. I mean, I already knew every Beatles song, and I knew the 60s and everything, but I never really looked at Bob Dylan. And then at some point, of course, with Blonde on Blonde, it's an album that is not a singer-songwriter album. It's like a Beatles album, if you will. It's something like Rubber Soul or Revolver. You know, it's a pop album, if you will. And so then I started to listen to Bob Dylan, and I wanted to become Bob Dylan in a sense. I mean, that's what I was Liam Gallagher at some point. I dressed like Liam Gallagher, wore fake glasses, and covered Oasis songs and did busking on the street, singing only Oasis songs for hours and trying to be Liam Gallagher. And then when I discovered Bob Dylan, I wanted to be Bob Dylan. So I started learning his songs, tried to sing a little bit like him, and bought the 60s suits and the Beatle boots and everything, and did concerts of I mean Bob Dylan cover concerts. So I had always these phases, these transformation phases, where I discover an artist and then imitate him. And at some point I'm over that, but I suppose that I take something with me from that impression. From that.
Is there something? Sorry, is there something that you anything that you miss about busking? I was going to ask you about that too.
Yeah.
What is it that you enjoyed about that?
The thing about busking is I never did it for a living. It was always a hobby. I mean, because when we were at school and were big Nirvana fans, we learned the Nirvana songs. I forgot that I was Kurt Cobain once too, of course. Kurt Cobain, then Liam Gallagher, then Bob Dylan. Okay, so and I mean, I had long hair, green hair at some point too, and these, I don't know, this Seattle outfit. So we wanted to become Kurt Cobain, and we thought, we have, how do we do this? We just sit down on the street in our little hometown, singing Nirvana songs, and imitating the MTV Unplugged concert on the streets of our little hometown, and that's how the street music started. It was more like, we don't have a stage, so we build a stage ourselves, and we make our own audience by pushing ourselves onto an audience who is walking down the street. And so I realized it's a great way to. Sorry?
Was this in Berlin?
No, this was in my hometown. It's 3 hours by train from Berlin. It's in the area of Hanover, and I was 16 or so when I started with the busking with my friends, and I realized, and I've never felt more as a rock star than during this busking phase, because you have all these projections of how it is, how it's going to be if you're on a real stage, that you feel much more as a rock star on a real stage when you're busking in your hometown. That was my impression, because then you have all these big images of how it's supposed to be. And so it became a hobby and a way of exploring playing live and how to deal with audiences. And so I just did this in Berlin. I was here for 6 months before I started with training as a nurse. And so I had these 6 months, and I thought, how do I connect with people? How do I make friends? So I can go to clubs and just stand there with my beer and feeling intimidated by all these grown-ups, or I can say, oh, never mind, I'm the center, I'm the focus here, because I go to the trendy areas in Berlin with my guitar, and then I don't feel depending on people's reactions. I don't feel depending on making new friends. It's just I'm there with everybody, and I don't feel like I have to belong, because I belong already, because I'm a musician on the street. And that's how I actually did make friends and connections with the local music scene. And that's curiously how I got my record deal. Not because this label Kitty Yo, this one of the guys who run Kitty Yo back then, he lived in the area where I used to busk, and he always saw me on the street and thought at first, not lunatic, but somebody who tries to push himself on. I mean, a young kid with a big head, or sort of with big ideas, so to speak. And so he kind of rolled his eyes when he passed me by, at first, and then I started to play soccer with with a team. I mean, in the
You can call it football. You can call it football.
Anyway, so it was not a professional team, but friends who meet once a week. And so this guy who ran Kitty Yo was one of the players. And so I thought, I know you from somewhere. And we recognized each other. And then he kind of started to feel respect for me. How do you say? Because I was a good player. And that's when it started, and then I gave him demo tapes, and he liked what I did. And so then he offered me this record deal. But it started with the busking. It started with me being out there and kind of, in an unusual sense, not trying to make money, but just hanging out with these in these trendy areas. And
in a way, it was kind of like paying your dues, wouldn't you say? In a way, you know what I'm saying? Paying your dues until you did get that, working your way, to becoming a musician, and as you said, playing in front of people, but kind of like paying your dues. Yeah.
Yeah, and also it's like it felt like going out, but let's say without the booze or the hangover or the trying to get laid. I mean, just the being out there amongst these party people and being amongst them, but not really being with them. And it felt perfect, actually. It felt like I've discovered a holy grail in a sense. So you're with these people, but it doesn't feel like you have to belong to them. You're just with them, and so it gives you a certain strength rather than, as I said before, standing there in a disco with your beer and hoping that somebody speaks to you at some point. But I mean, if I sing, I don't have to speak to anybody, and nobody has to speak to me, and they might even look up to me anyway. So, a suggestion for yeah.
But there's that connection, even if you don't speak to them. There's that connection that you're making with the audience when you're playing. It's an unspoken, thing. But let's switch gears just a bit. You did mention about the nursing. Can you talk a little bit about that? Why was did that have to do with your schooling? Was there an interest in going into nursing? Did that predate the music, or was the music always there?
The music was always there. I mean, my first instrument was, I mean, the recorder, as it is for everybody in Germany. You have to play the silly recorder. But when I discovered the Beatles, I wanted to play the drums. So my first instrument was actually the drums. My parents bought me drums. And only later I started to learn the guitar and the piano. And so I had my first band, actually, I had when I was 9 or 10 with a friend at school. He played the piano, I played the drums. No singing. And we were called the New Beatles. And later I had bands where I was the drummer. So I used to be a drummer for a long time, until I think the end of the 90s, until I started writing my own songs. I think with the Nirvana and Oasis thing, I thought, okay, I see all these Liam Gallagher's and Kurt Cobain's, and they're not drummers. I was happy as a drummer, and I mean, and I was an okay drummer, but I saw my idols are singers, and they play the guitar, for example. And so I thought, if I want to be my idols, then I have to be a singer and a guitar or piano player. And that's when I switched, if you will, and started to write songs, because I realized you have to write your own songs. Otherwise, you're a cover artist who is interested in that. So you have to do the real thing. And so I not only had I had bands where I was the drummer, and then later I had my own project, Maximilian, where I recorded my stuff on 4-track machines. And so I knew I have to become a musician. I don't know why I thought that way, but I felt that's the only thing I'm really interested in. And so I did this civil service. So except of going to the army, we could choose to go to a hospital, for example, to work there for a year. And I did that after school and while recording my stuff. And so I wanted to study literature, and my parents convinced me, if you want to become a musician, it's better to have a training that only lasts for a couple of years, and then you can do your music. And because I did this hospital work already, because I had to in a way after school, so I knew the work at a hospital. The easiest was to continue that and do a training as a nurse. I mean, I don't regret it, but obviously it was never anything I would have wanted to do. But I mean, it was a good decision, but it was a very odd decision. But the thought behind it was, you have to have something in your hands before you become a musician. And the irony is that I never finished the training as a nurse, because I got the record deal after 2 years of training instead of 3, and I gave up the nursing thing.
Right.
And so I'm not a nurse now. I'm nothing.
So,
And
so let me interject. So your thinking was you needed to have something stable, an income.
my parents thinking.
Okay, your parents thinking. but you didn't have a passion for the nursing like you do for music. But you know, one thing that's really good to hear about your parents, that they were supportive
Yes.
of your music. And you hear a lot of musicians, you know, I guess maybe older ones, that their parents were always looking down on that, or said, no, you'll never be a musician. You know, you need something more stable, you know, that kind of thing. So it's good. Were your parents musicians themselves, or did you come from a family that was you mentioned that they had a lot of albums, you know, that you listened to, you know, your was it your father, your mother, or both that were musically inclined, or you know, enjoyed music?
Yeah, I mean, my mother had her wild hippie years in a way in the 60s when she moved to Munich and lived with a painter there in Schwabing, so in these kind of artistic areas from Munich. I mean, this scene where I don't know. Uschi Obermeier, the muse from Keith Richards, she was from
Yeah,
Schwabing as well.
yeah,
So I mean,
yeah.
this kind of um, dope smoking hippie scene in Munich.
Uh-huh.
And she lived with a painter and had her wild years back then
I
with.
just saw a documentary of Keith Richards. You may have seen it. It's more recent. He's in Connecticut, I believe, and he's recording his own material.
Mm,
And you know that raspy voice of his. He's still drinking his JD, still smoking, but he's aging, but you know he's still got that fight in him too. You know,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
still.
yeah.
Anyway, go back to.
Yeah, and so my mother knew this kind of world. My father did not really, but he brought Melanie and Leonard Cohen into our family, so to speak. And they were not musicians. I mean, my mother likes to sing, but and she painted herself a bit. But then she became a teacher, and my father is a builder. How do you say? Machine building? I don't know the exact word. So he worked for VW as an engineer, and but it was always. I mean, they were from these years when it. I mean, they had these stern parents, but they didn't want to become like that. So it was obvious that my parents would say, "No, of course you have to become a musician if you want to do that." You know, because they were from these Woodstock years, so to speak. That was in their hearts.
Good. They were a little more liberal thinking then.
Yeah.
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 That's good. That's good. You came from that kind of upbringing. So where did the influence for you music, besides just hearing music, where did that come? Where did who is your muse? You know, the inspiration for wanting to become a musician. You know, where did that come from?
I think first the joy it brings, and then I suppose a certain talent that you. I think there's a saying: talent is you realize your talent when you look at what comes easy to you, and of course these idols I had. I mean, my parents gave me a book about the Beatles with all these photos of them being on stage and with fans and so on. I thought that's obviously the greatest what you can achieve, right? You're living your dream. Your hobby is your job suddenly, and people like it, and girls love it, and all that stuff. And that's I mean, yeah. My inspiration was, I suppose, the idols and my talent. And however, that's not really the inspiration for writing the songs. I think that's a different story. Um,
You want to go into that? Where do you find most of your inspiration? Where does
yeah,
that come?
I think I suppose that all my songs more or less sound the same. This is what my people who don't like me might point out. And because I'm not at all interested in variety, I'm interested in reproducing a certain emotion with my music. So when I sing, when I write a song or when I play a song, I'm in a different sphere, so to speak, and I reproduce a feeling or I evoke a feeling as an emotion that is more or less otherworldly, I suppose, or from a different life, I don't know, or from childhood. And it is an intense emotion of feeling in, at peace with yourself or as a whole, rather than a torn being or somebody who is caught in their everyday life. So it's escapism in a way. So you escape your body. I mean, and you become suddenly your song. You become this intense, otherworldly emotion. I mean, so so to get into that emotion is perhaps what most musicians, what inspires them. It's not so much money or fame or the shagging or whatever. It's mainly that they, while performing, they feel as different or better beings, so to speak, or beings who don't consist of two opposites, but maybe suddenly the opposites become one compelling being, you know.
Would you
But
would you consider yourself a very spiritual person?
I suppose so. I mean, I'm not religious,
Right.
but I,
Well, that's
but
different. That's different. Yeah. I'm not talking
yeah,
about religion.
but I mean, at the moment, I write a novel, and I can practically cannot write just a straight normal sentence. So I always um, it always turns into a poetic thing where it's mostly about what I just spoke about, some kind of overcoming your body or some kind of spiritual thing. And that's in my music or in the art. I mean, and I always think it sounds pretentious what I do, but I'm not pretentious, but I always end up being Sorrows of Young Werther, you know? I mean, you know this novel by Goethe?
Yes. Yes.
So I mean, that's what the people, especially in Germany, the journalists, most of the music journalists in Germany look down on me and ridicule me. I mean, after the first album, and after they realize, oh, it's always the same, or the wimp with his um, whining, blah blah blah, and so and I always, in Germany at least, the journalists always thought I'm a pretender. I'm making things up, and I try to sound a romantic.
Right.
And
What
I always
what
think, am I pretender, or where does it come from? But I cannot really help it. But doing this
right.
young sorrows of young Werther stuff, so it's somewhere in me, and I don't hope that uh, I'm pretentious. You know, I mean, because
Right.
it's
I think most of the really talented musicians, artists throughout history have butted heads with journalists.
yeah.
I don't think I don't think you necessarily have to agree with their critique, and a lot of times they're way off base. They're not speaking. They're speaking from more of a financial, lot of times, a standpoint, or what they consider to be successful. So what would you say the German journalists, what kind of music do they find, you know, really good? If they're knocking you, what kind of stuff do they like?
I mean, the interesting thing at first, when I did this Infinite Love songs, which you could almost call an autistic album because it's ballad after ballad after ballad. It's not really there's no much variation. So they kind of found interesting that I insist on this wimpy songs, and that they respected that, but only for one album. And after that, they said, "Oh my God!" Even when Rose came out, they said, "Oh, pff, again this falsetto, wimpy stuff." And no, but what journalists love is, I mean, they adore these artists like Beatles, Björk, David Bowie, because these are artists who always changed, or Madonna. There's these blueprints of how a successful career is going to is supposed to look like, or Bob Dylan. Nothing is ever the same. Every album is totally different, and they invent new styles, and they have new instruments, and then they experiment with orchestra, and then only piano. And the next album is suddenly with blue hair, and then green hair, and then suddenly the deep voice, and lay lady lay suddenly, and all these transformations. And journalists love that. And once an artist insists of doing always the same, like I don't know, The Offspring. I mean, I didn't follow them, but I had the impression there's a couple of bands or musicians out there who always do the same thing, and their fans love them for that. But the critics hate that because they don't have anything to write about, and they have this ideal that the artist is only a good artist if he always changes. But my problem is that I'm not interested in change. I'm only interested in producing this emotion, and it's like you have this drug, and it works every time you use it. Why should you suddenly change the drug? I mean, it sounds a little autistic. Of course, maybe you discover different drugs, but I mean, for me, I did my music first of all because I wanted to create a certain feeling, emotion, vibe, and then I was lucky that there were people who wanted to listen to it, and so I could make a living from it. I mean, I was never rich or anything like that, and it was always difficult. But I'm a successful musician because I was able to make myself happy or achieve my goals with the art, and so that was the most important. And I piss everybody off, the manager or journalist, especially because I'm the artist who you don't want to work with, because I'm this autistic. I'm not autistic, and I don't want to make fun of that, but I use it as a metaphor. I'm insisting on this always, mama, mama, this song after song after song, this kind of vibe, and uh, I'm not really the artist who you sell out. It might be difficult because it's I have my agenda and I'm not gonna change. You know, this kind of it's not I'm not easy to work with, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think that would get you, at least from my point of view, a lot more respect. I think if you do what you want and what the fans, and then you have fans, you're a fans darling, I guess you could say, and you're doing what you want, you know, to hell with the critics. You know, you can't please everybody, and I would more, you know, I would much more want to do what's in my heart and what drives me, and I get an emotional surge from, and my fans do as well, than the critics. You know, I mean,
Of course, of course. And but the other thing is you work with people, and for example, as in the Ken Sweeney documentary, um, the for example, the Blue Nile are a little similar. They are these uh, autistic musicians, so to speak, who don't want any producer, and then they still take the big money from the company. And then, as one of these guys said, they play the game, but they didn't play the game. So they took the money, hence played the game, but they refuse to really play it. So that's the thing. If you work with people, if you're managers and distributors and so on, you have a certain responsibility, and you should, out of respect, try to sell your music too. It's part of the game too. And but I never really successfully did that, you know. But I mean, I'm not this kind of David Bowie, Björk type who says, okay, next album, what do we do now? Let's make a concept. Oh, the topic is that and that. And I already remember, I have this new hairdo in mind and this new light show, and everything is going to be different. And, you know, I mean, that's, I was never really into that. It maybe I'm just lazy, but I you know, I'm not interested in the production or I mean, eventually I am, because when I listen to an album and it sounds great, then I'm happy that I have a producer who took care of the production. But I did this really crappy sounding album by myself. Actually, it's demos that I recorded. It's I think my 5th album. And was wollte ich sagen? Oh, I forgot what I wanted to say. So it's and I thought if I can express what I wanted to express, sound doesn't matter, and even lyrics don't matter. So I mean, it was an experiment. It's called "I'm Nothing But Emotion, No Human Being, No Sun, Never Again Sun," and yeah, lange Rede kurzer Sinn. So yeah. So you have to play the game too, because you're in the music business. And I mean, I found people who work with me who say, okay, we cannot really sell you out, but you're a character. That's how I'm labeled, mostly a character rather than I don't know, a product. And I mean, but when you look at it, aren't there are characters who are world famous. So it sometimes it works, of course. I mean, especially Björk or David Bowie, all the mentioned ones. These are Sigur Rós or all these world famous acts who insisted on their uniqueness or their stubbornness, and sometimes, or Radiohead, and sometimes it works. Sometimes these become world famous. But there's the usual way is that you make compromises and cash in. And I always dreamt of becoming, let's say, a Radiohead, you know, and I mean, doing what I do and not compromising myself and still becoming world famous, you know. But there's only a few artists who achieve that.
Achieve that. You're a Leo. Would you say that you are a very strong Leo?
Oh, I don't know a lot about these things. No.
The science about that. Okay. I just noticed your birthday that you're. I didn't know if you were into that. I'm Cancer. So I was born. We're both born in July. I'm July 11th. So you know, a few days older than you. Yeah, and a few years.
Yeah.
But no, I think that you know, remain true to yourself. That's what's most important. You know, like you said, there is a compromise. You do have to work when you're in the business, but still remaining true to yourself. One thing I wanted to ask you about. You were talking about the '70s material, that your parents, the albums and the music that you were listening to. One of your songs off of Rose, My Story, My Story. That's got to be a John Denver dedication song, right?
No,
not John.
I mean, of course, because of the quote. I mean, I think it just sounded well when writing the lyrics.
Yeah, Almost Heaven, West Virginia.
Yeah, I mean that's just a silly quote, I suppose, that sounded nice when writing the lyrics. So I mean,
So you didn't have that in mind. You didn't have that in mind when you wrote the song.
No, what I did have in mind is a song by a Swiss artist called, what's it called? Bipolar Dream, I suppose. I mean, it was used for a commercial in the 90s. All those voices in my head. You know that one?
No, haven't heard that one.
Anyway,
No.
so but one thing, the inspiration, the story of my last album, Wretched Love Songs, is the story of my. I had a younger sister who was born, who died when she was born because of complications during the birth, and then she was reanimated, and was severely handicapped after that. And she died with 23 years. I mean, 20 years ago she died when she was 23. And anyway, so the her birth was some kind of family trauma. And I was 2 years old when she was born, and my parents used to try to nurse her at home. And during this 1 year, they couldn't really take care so much of me and my brother, at least emotionally. So that's where I think most of what I do and my music comes from that year, comes from this being the center of my mother's world when I was a young 2-year-old, to becoming some kind of outcast suddenly when my sister was born, and my parents were traumatized, and also tried to take care of my sister at home until they gave her in the special institution, how do you say, nursing home, which was a wise decision because she was so severely handicapped that you, as parents, it was a full 24 hours job, and you had 2 sons anyway. So, and I think that most of my songs, so when I sing, it's the voice of a, how do I say in German? I say it das Flehen. Warte mal, that's an interesting word. I have to look up. Flehen. Ja, ich hab's gleich. The craving, the begging, the pleading of a child. So I think most of my songs might be a communication with my mother. As being a 2-year-old who feels abandoned and then trying to communicate to get his mother's attention. That's, I think, it's one of the main inspiration of my music. And I suppose I might sing with this high or childish or even female voice because of that too. And
So
after,
so you can remember back to when you were 2 years old. You can remember
no,
that.
I
No.
cannot remember, but of course, going through analysis, it's obvious that this was a very important year in my life where my commitment phobia derives from. I mean, I never had a proper grown-up relationship with a woman. I mean, had affairs and stuff like that, but I'd never had a proper relationship because I don't feel really capable. And I think it derives from losing my trust in my childhood. So there is somebody who you trust, and suddenly they are gone. I mean, of course, there are much worse examples of that when, for example, parents die or get divorced or abuse their children. That's the real shit, so to speak. But I mean, my story is a bit similar. So I think my biography and my music and my art comes from that year where I try to communicate with my mother, so to speak. And when my sister finally went to this nursing home, and my mother and me suddenly were inseparable again. And I have this theory that my mother and me, my mother turned me into the lost daughter that she didn't really have. So my female sides are also very strong. So I think that's also why I sing like a woman, I mean, so to speak. So it has a lot to do with my relationship with my mother and with that year where I felt abandoned. So my music, so I think when I sing, it's this otherworldly sphere, or maybe it's the past that is my inspiration. And when I mean there's a few concerts where my mother attended, and every time she was in the audience, I always felt like crying. And when I sang, it was more intense than it used to be. And I suddenly thought, maybe all the songs are true. I mean, of course, you write lyrics and think, yeah, it's supposed to sound well, and it's not about me. And later you realize, maybe my songs are true. Maybe I mean what I say. You know? And
Is that so bad? I
no,
said, is
it's
that
I mean, it's a success. It's a success. It's a successful writing session when you express something.
I think
Yourself.
it's always a good thing to be in touch with your female side. You know, we all have a male, a masculine, and a female,
Yeah,
and you know, a lot of people kind of look down on that or whatever. But I think it's good. I think you're more of a balanced human being when you're in touch with that female side as a male. You
yeah.
know? But did you, speaking of siblings, so you mentioned the sister, and you mentioned a brother.
Yeah,
Okay. Was it just the three of you?
yeah.
Or okay, okay. And your brother, is he younger, older?
2 years older.
Okay, okay.
Mm.
And what was your relationship with him like growing up?
Oh, always fine, I suppose. I think that he had this common problem that he was the first, and then suddenly 2 years later, there's somebody who takes his attention. So I think he felt a bit jealous, and I never did, which is the usual way. But and he uh, took this route from my parents, more or less. He became a teacher, and he's now a family father and a teacher, and has a solid life. And I chose this route that is maybe common for the younger kids. The crazy thing. No, I mean this you know what I mean, rebellion, or the
Right.
attempt to, I mean,
Are you close with your brother?
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
Still have a pretty good relationship. What about your parents? Are they still living?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. Also a good relationship that, especially during the last years. I mean, at some point, from being, I mean, this change. I mean, when parents turn into your friends, it's supposed to happen, I suppose, when you're a grown up. I mean, when you're in your puberty, they're your enemies, and they're like your teachers, and you try to fight them. And at some point, they turn into your friends because you find your true self, if you will. So you find strength within yourself rather than in the outside world, not in your parents or in your friends or in idol, but suddenly in yourself. And then you don't feel depending on your parents anymore, and that's when you suddenly realize who they are. They are neither giants nor enemies. They are human beings, and you see them for the first time, so to speak, and they might become your friends. And I mean, that's a process that happened quite late for me, a couple of years ago. And so now it's not like, oh, I have to create a distance to my parents in order to see myself and not to be um, overshadowed by my parents, or my mother especially. But yeah, I mean, of course, that's something in order to find yourself, you have to Oedipus, right? You kill your father in order to become a man, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's putting
So,
it one way. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, did you want to say? Were you going to say something else?
no.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's so much. What do you enjoy most about music? Do you enjoy the composing, the writing the music, or the performing?
I suppose writing and playing at home to myself, because the performance has always. I think I only enjoy every 20th performance, live performance. So what by the way, I have a blue light filter glasses. So because I sit in front of the monitor for hours a day, I would like to use it now as well.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It's because of the computer light, so it filters off the blue light. Anyway, so
those are real fashionable too.
yeah, maybe. it looks like somebody. It looks like a Liam Gallagher glasses, but it's medical ones. Anyway, and so what I didn't mention about the busking, when I played on the street, every time people stopped and listened, I stopped playing because I didn't want anybody to stand there and listen. So I enjoyed when people walked by. So I enjoyed when when my music sounded different in public, but once somebody focused and looked at me, I felt judged, and I suddenly had all these mechanisms like, do I sing well? Oh, now I have to finish the song. I hope I don't forget the words. And so every time somebody stopped and listened, I stopped myself until they kept on walking, because I wanted to be in public and perform, but not feeling like I was, I don't know, in a test situation. And every live concert is a test situation. That's the problem.
Like
It's
under under a microscope.
Yeah, and it's that the eyes of the audience trigger my superego, so to speak, trigger my these mechanisms like, oh, maybe I'm ugly, maybe my voice is bad, maybe I'm a bad human being too. And so sometimes I feel strong on stage, but most of the time I feel weak and try to hide that. I feel ashamed. I mean, I play every concert that I'm offered, and I love to go on tour. Um, so it's like, oh, I love being on the road. If only there were no concerts. Like, oh, I love ice cream. If only it weren't that cold, you know. I love the checking in and the staying at hotels and all that stuff, and being in the van. But the concerts, no. But there's concerts I very much enjoyed, but it most of the time I feel pressure. So I enjoy doing music mostly when I'm by myself,
are you
or
are you a homebody? Would you consider yourself a homebody?
no, I mean, yeah, not especially home, but I'm this kind of lonely wolf, ivory tower person. I mean, um, I, I I think that I do it. I don't know, how do you say, by my free will, but I suppose it's just an effect from my inability really to be in relationships. I mean, it's not that bad. I've friends. I can be a very social person, but I felt I feel um, the best when I'm on my own. And for example, when I do journeys on my own, I mean, out in the woods, on my own. I mean, these romantic dreams of the lonely wolf with his scribbling down his crazy notes. But um, I think all these romantic, lonely poets and artists are of course people who suffer from their being loners, and I suppose I suffer, but I don't I don't realize it that often. I cultivate the being a loner in order to not deal with being alone, you know.
Right, right. I can follow you there. I can follow you. You mentioned traveling. Are there certain countries or places that you've been that you really enjoyed? Some of your favorite places that you've been?
Yeah, I mean, I always loved Northern Europe, especially Scandinavia and Finland. And of course, because of my not fame, but being known in Asian countries, I started to have love-hate relationships with Korea and China, Taiwan, and so on. And
Let
I
me
mean,
ask. Let me ask you about that too. Is your what do you how do you account for your your fame, I guess you could say, in Asia, for people in Asia, latching onto you and appreciating your music. What do you account?
yeah, I mean, I think it's I was lucky because the Kitty Yo used to be very trendy all around the world. My first label, Kitty Yo. I mean, they had Peaches and Gonzalez, all those artists, and because of that, Kitty Yo records were to be found in Asian, even Chinese, Korean record stores when they still had record stores. So that's how it started in these countries, that there were music lovers or radio DJs or label owners who just thought, what's the latest trend in Europe? Kings of Convenience, for example. And then I was the German Kings of Convenience at that time. And then they thought, okay, Maximilian Hacker sounds interesting. And then they did license deals, and it seemed to work out. So I think it started with being on Kitty Yo and being exposed to these music lovers all around the world. And but then my music, I suppose, is quite similar to a lot of the East Asian pop music, if I may generalize. So if you listen to the radio in, for example, China or in Korea, of course, nowadays there's a lot of R&B influenced K-pop up-tempo stuff, dance music, if you will. But there's a lot of heartfelt ballads. So, for example, if you're an East Asian pop musician, you might have an up-tempo song as the first single, but the second is already the heartfelt mega power pop ballad. And there's a lot of so in the especially in the Korean, but also in the Chinese how do you say, culture, there people love melancholic, moody art and music, and it has a much different image than or standing that it has, for example, in Germany, where somebody who is sensitive might be labeled a wimp rather than a heartfelt or what do you say? So I realized that in East Asia they looked up to me because of my being weak and full of these wimpy emotions. And
Have you ever played Indonesia?
only once, and I've tried to get into that market, but no, not really.
The reason I ask is my wife is from Indonesia.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I met her online, and we've been
Yeah.
married 19. Next year will be 20 years. But
Oh,
I just threw that out there. But
yeah,
let me ask you too about the concerts, like in
yeah.
South Korea. How are they different than, let's say, other parts of the world?
Um, Yeah. So
The fan.
I mean, the fans in Korea are very polite and quiet, as they are in China, because they are not really brought up to be wild teenagers. And so, however, if you motivate them to, or there might be moments during the concert when they suddenly turn berserk or wild or into Beatles fans, more or less. So like from black to white, and suddenly screaming, or and or so you have your everyday life as a Korean, for example, and you're supposed to function, and you look up to your boss and to the older people in the society. But there are certain situations when you're allowed to um, be yourself, be free, and these situations where you're allowed to, how do you say, go wild and express your individuality, or your needs, or your lust, or your passion. And for example, concerts, and of course binge drinking, which is quite big in Korea. So people have their stern everyday life, and then with their company, they go binge drinking. It's part of it's being even from the company account. I mean, maybe it's a cliche, but what I wanted to say is that during a concert or celebrations, that people kind of change from um, and suddenly let loose and show their emotions. So that's why I think musicians love to play in East Asia, or maybe in Asia in general, because the fans are so appreciative, and they're not full of bullshit like, is this really trendy? And I compare with a lot of other and do I look good when I dance? And I mean, so it's like it's I mean, I don't know. I don't want to sound what's the word, discriminatory, but it's more like you play to. No, I cannot say it. Only off the record. No, you know, for example, in Berlin or London, you play to grown-ups who think they have seen it all, and are the real checkers. And if you play in Korea, it's like you play to an open-hearted child. You know, that to metaphor now. And so you sing, and it goes straight to the heart of the audience. That's expression, and it's not, you have to go through a lot of filters or masks of cool.
Pretense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
What?
more direct. I mean, it seems like the audience is very polite, and are they actually getting what I get? But I mean, they listen like you're a wise man, and they appreciate it. And if you make a joke of, if suddenly the situation is or at the end of the concert, and you say, just come closer to the stage, they suddenly turn into these Beatles fans, who, or these how do you say, these Rolling Stones concerts where where the audience trashed the whole venue. You know these stories?
Right.
Yeah,
What? What? Let me ask you about. Do you enjoy Korean food? Have you
yeah, I
had some
do.
really? Yeah,
A
I do.
lot. Yeah, yeah,
I do
yeah,
as well. There's a couple of restaurants locally, and there's a little Asian area, and then there's
yeah,
another one coming close to us. Um, that's really good food. I really enjoy the. I enjoy the barbecue. You know, where you go in the
yeah,
restaurant
yeah,
and you actually grill it yourself. You know,
yeah, yeah,
that kind
yeah.
of.
Yeah,
But
but
go ahead.
your question why I might be popular there is, as I said, that my approach to music and my melancholy, or the sound, or my point of view on how anyway, it's very similar to the Korean and Chinese. And now the thing is that a Caucasian guy does East Asian music, and that's maybe the interesting thing there. You know what I mean? I think that my intention in music and art is quite similar to the Korean and Chinese one, and and I'm interesting because I do their music as a Caucasian, and also, I mean, maybe it changed now, but it I have this theory that it was is interesting that a man is not afraid to show his feelings, so to speak, when I suppose that in a traditional Asian society, a man might not speak of weakness or cry or speak of his mother or his broken heart. You know, I mean, I think it changed now, especially with the K-pop wave and everything, where um, it's I suppose much more popular for especially Korean or yeah, I don't know, Japanese, Chinese men to wear makeup, to look like a K-pop star, and where the genders kind of mix, and where homosexuality is not that big a deal anymore. But I think when I started 15 years ago, maybe they found it interesting that I was not. I mean, I I was not afraid of being a wimp. You know.
Right. Well, you mentioned earlier your book, The Rise and Fall of Maximilian Hecker. What spurred you to write this, and what is the book all about?
Yeah. By the way, the book I write.
10 words or less. No.
Yeah.
I'm joking.
By the way, the book I spoke about is a novel I write at the moment. It's not. I mean, you know. So at the moment I write a second book. Okay, but the first book it's autobiographical, and it consists mainly of diary entries that I turned into a book. And I had all these notes, and I saw that friends of mine or other musicians published books, and I thought, hey, what I did is quite similar. And so then only I thought maybe I can do that too. And I mean, it's practically how my career started, and ending with the Asian fame. I mean, I mean, the book starts in 2000, let's say in 1999, and ends in 2008. So it's the first 10 years of the career, and how I started as a musician, and how I ended up in Asia.
Okay. You mentioned love-hate relationship. Could you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, hate is a strong word, but I think it's the cultural shock or the cultural differences, and because a lot of Asian societies, and I suppose a lot of societies all around the world, communicate differently from Germany or Northern Europe. I think, especially here, people are quite direct, and if they say no, they say no. But of course, there are societies, also America, I suppose, where things are sugar coated more. And for example, the cliche of, oh yeah, let's hang out. So the German hears, oh, he wants to be my new friend. And the American might think, yeah, it was just there, whatever. It didn't mean anything. It was just words to say, hey, at the moment I'm in a good mood. That's it. Anyway, so the German is very bad in reading between the lines, and especially in Asia, from my experience, um, I was never really be able to find out what people actually meant. And in a lot of situations when I thought, oh, I found a new friend or I found a new girlfriend, it was just a hallucination or just in my head, and people just wanted to be friendly, or at that moment wanted to show what they see in theory could do with me in the future, and I took it literally. And so I have kind of a broken heart from these wrong judgments I made. I mean, a lot of promises have been made to me especially in Korea. A lot of promises by people, by business partners, or not business partners, but potential business partners, by K-pop artists, by um, by big companies, and it always ended up in smoke. And and then I thought, did I just dream this? Did I hallucinate this, or was this real? Why did they talk to me sweetly like that to start with? I mean, why did they need to tease me? So as a German, I felt teased a lot, and then dropped, when in reality I suppose I was not able to read between the lines, you know. So that's where it comes from. Also, I mean, when you have business relationships with Asian partners, and it's about money or about concerts, and you always try to read between the lines, and then you wonder, okay, is he at the hospital, or fell from a bridge, or does he want to speak? Does he want to tell me that no, the deal fell through by ghosting me? You know what I mean? So that's the problem. So of course, when you avoid the no because you think, oh, I don't want to hurt the other one, then the other one thinks, oh, is this now this ghosting no, this polite no, or did something happen, or did I do something bad? You know what I mean?
Right,
So
right.
that's the problem, that there's always left somebody fell off a bridge, or I hurt them, or it's the polite no. You know, you can always choose amongst the three, and you go crazy.
Right. Well, I think you sound like that you're a sensitive individual. You know, most musicians and artists are, and I think you were looking for the goodness in people and trusting them at their word. Has this made you a little more jaded as you've gotten older?
What is jaded?
Uh, Jaded is like not trusting people as much, you know, and not putting yourself out there, you know, to be not as vulnerable, you know, around people, you know,
Yeah.
kind of standing back, you know, more.
Yeah, you know what my problem is? I call it paradoxical trust. So every time I meet a new person, or I kind of fall back into this child, um, before my sister, so to speak, who trusts blindly. So I always have this dream that I can meet somebody and can trust them blindly. So, for example, I mean, this is an interview, of course, but I think I'm quite frank and open about everything.
Hmm.
This is how I speak. Might even speak to a stranger, or a first date, for example, and think, oh, I can say everything. He might, it's all right, and then you realize, oh no, oh God, I did the same mistake always and always again. I'm too candid, and I'm
Let me
suddenly.
Right. Let me stop you real quick. I wanted to say I appreciate your candor and your openness, and carrying the conversation as well. This is my first Skype interview.
Okay.
All of my other interviews have been the written type, you know, on my website. So of course you have more time to go, you know, come up with questions and more time to format and put and you know put the interview on the website. So this was I was a little nervous
Mm.
about this, and I was like, how am I going to carry this? You know, what if he stops talking? Uh, you know, what I need to come up with questions. You know, intriguing questions. You know, and
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. But I appreciate that you're kind of carrying the conversation, and I don't have to really do that much. You follow?
Yeah. Yeah, because I think at the beginning I trust everybody like kid would do, and then only later I realized again I trusted too soon. So but yeah, I still have this dream that people are generally good. And I mean, I don't know. Seems like the opposite in a lot of cases. But yeah, so when I meet, I don't know, let's say Korean celebrity, and he says, "Oh, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do that, and we're gonna do write songs together," and I think, yeah, he means that, and he's my new friend from now on. And I mean, I have tons of story where it was like that, and I never heard from them ever again. It was just that moment where it's a little bit like bragging and just blah blah blah. Also, very, by the way, not a Korean issue, but show business. That's the thing. I mean, of course, it's the cliche that in show business people talk a lot and like themselves talking big, and then eventually, I mean, for example, go on some kind of uh, Academy Awards after show party. How many big words you might hear there, and how many deals follow from that? I
Right.
suppose very few. But after that evening, you think, oh, I met this, and this, and it's got great future ahead of me. And then nothing. I mean, how many evenings like that I had where I met a lot of people and everybody, yeah, we're going to do, and then absolutely zero came from it.
Yeah. Well, that's something too that I appreciate. I want to say appreciate you taking the time to do this. You didn't know me from Adam. Um, Michael is a really nice guy. I mean, just from
Yeah,
emailing with him, he was kind of your buffer, I guess,
yeah,
in a way. Um, but I had an instant. Of course, I'm just doing interviews, and I'm trying to get up, up to speed and start doing some more now that COVID is. I mean, it's kind of iffy, but it seems like more people are willing to now. Um, but I had an instant not too long ago where it looked like everything was working out, and it was going to be a written interview. And then all of a sudden, the guy said, "Call me. Here's my phone number." He's in Ireland, right? I'm in Texas. So I said, "Okay, I'm willing to work with you." So I called. I tried to call, but our phone service doesn't, pay for international. We don't have that on our phone service. I didn't even think about that. So it wouldn't go through. Then I emailed him. I said, "How about still doing the written interview? I'm still willing to do that. How about you?" And he said no. He just said no, absolutely not. And I was kind of a little bit bitter because I had taken a lot of the time to write, the questions. And of course, he's a musician from the '70s. A lot of them that I've done are older guys. But he had every right to say no, but that he wasn't willing to work with me.
mm,
And, okay, the phone thing didn't work. I'll go ahead and do this since you've taken the time. And he just said no. And I said, okay, thanks for wasting your time and my time.
mm,
I mean, that's how I left it. 'Cause,
mm.
I just kind of felt like that. But anyway, that's just a little
Yeah.
story of mine. But I appreciate you looking on the website and, with Brian, I really enjoyed the one album of his that I had heard at that point, um, Mr. Sweeney. But
Do you know the documentary he did, the Blue Nile one?
no, I want to. What is it called again?
In Search of the Blue Nile,
Okay, I'm going to check that out.
and you can hear on SoundCloud somewhere. And yeah,
Writing that down. Yeah, he was a really nice guy too.
mm.
Really nice guy. Um, what else was I? Are you all talked out now? Is that what
No,
I'm?
no, but
No.
about the story of my influences, and so as I said, and at some point Bob Dylan, blah blah blah, and so the the most important discovery from the last 10 years, of course, was the Blue Nile and Paul Buchanan. And I mean, the thing is, I don't really follow music, and I don't have Spotify or anything, and I don't. I mean, I know what I have, and I listen to that. I'm not this kind of. I'm not really curious. I should be to widen my, how to say, horizon. But anyway, so sometimes I'm lucky and I discover music by accident. For example, a Paul Buchanan song was in an English movie called About Time by Richard Curtis, the guy who did Notting Hill and so on. And so the thing about the Blue Nile and Paul Buchanan is that it's not so much anymore about the quality of the music, but that this band or this singer is, as I said, like a good ghost, or like it's a different relationship. It's not competitive in the sense of this is my favorite song and they are better than that band, or my top three is that, and he's a better singer, or the guitar player can do this lick. So it's not at all about comparing the Blue Nile to other bands. It's a different sphere, different, and yeah. So that's interesting. This discovery.
My first exposure to the Blue Nile was Tinseltown in the Rain. You familiar
Mm-hmm.
with that song? There was a radio station here, that alternative in the 80s, that played a lot of, it was on a Sunday night, played a lot of alternative stuff. And that's what my first exposure to them. And of course, I was heavily into 80s alternative music.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, got excuse me, lots of that. But that's very interesting. Are you familiar with let me just throw this out here. Chameleons? Are you familiar with the Chameleons? That's another band. It's, like the what lizard, the chameleon that changes colors. Um, Check them out too. You might look
Mm-hmm.
them up on YouTube. And then my website, I have over 500 songs that I've uploaded from
Mm-hmm.
different artists. Stuff. Tending the Pale Bloom. It's the same. All one word. Tending the Pale Bloom.
Mm-hmm.
You might, when you have time, just go and see some of the songs that I've uploaded there. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I was going to ask you about COVID. How has that impacted you and your friends, family, that kind of that?
I mean, there is no issues or cases or anything or problems in friends, in the friend circle or family. And
Did you have your vaccination? Did you have your shot?
no. And so I mean, when it started, I was already writing my book, so my everyday life didn't change, and I didn't plan any concerts or tour, and so so far I have not suffered from the consequences, because I there was no tour or concerts planned, and I renewed a couple of deals, license deals with Asia. So that's how I can make money from my back catalog rather than playing live. So I mean, I think there will be consequences with the live playing. And for example, there was an offer from China playing a tour in spring, and Michael said, we should be careful at the moment. We don't really know what happens once you go into the country. And if you do the contract now on basis what happens in China, and then you do the tour 6 months later, and suddenly there's new laws, and you enter the country, and suddenly you get all kinds of vaccinations or treatment or whatever that you never thought of when you signed the contract. Anyway, so I don't know how my future is going to look like when my market is, for example, China or Korea.
Right.
But at the moment, what it did, it bought me time to write a book, and rather than being a musician, and the book writing is also very important to me. At the moment, it's more important to me than music, of course. Although I have my new, I don't know, 11 or 12 songs ready, and I'm going to record them next year. So
Oh, well,
there's going to be album number 10. Hopefully end of next year. But at the moment I write this book, and yeah, ironically, the Corona thing bought me time, to write a book rather than focus on
good. So
music.
it was kind of a mixed blessing. Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about we didn't talk about the videos.
Mm-hmm.
You've got quite a few. Do you enjoy participating in that, doing that?
Do you mean the music videos, the standard
Yes.
ones?
Yes.
Oh, no, I never enjoyed that. And I always wanted them to be quite aesthetic, and but I think most of my music videos are less interesting than the ones where you have a story, for example. And I wanted them to look more like an art piece rather than entertaining music video. Yeah, I don't know. I did a couple of them on my own, and I mean it's part of the game rather than a joy.
Let me ask you about writing songs. Do you come up with an idea first, and maybe the lyrics, and then the music comes later, or do you compose the music first and then the lyrics?
Yeah, lyrics always come. I mean, I don't write any lyrics until I have to go into the studio. So I take about a month for lyrics. So my songs exist for years or months without any lyrics. I mean, I sing something. Yeah, we call Indianer English in German, like pseudo English, or not some words you put together. Like "Shooby-doo, I love you." No, not really like that, but something that represents the lyrics. And so the chord sequence and the melody, that's the song, and the lyrics, yeah, I write later, and it's also important, but not as important as the music. By the way, I write English lyrics because I've always listened to English artists. You know, starting with Melanie and then the Beatles. So pop music for me was an English thing. So when I became a musician, I imitated what I had heard, and that was English. So I mean, of course, in Germany, the journalists asked me, why would you write in English? Isn't it a little fake? And maybe it is, but I'm just doing what I have learned as a kid, you know.
Right. Were there any German artists that you liked or followed at all?
Yeah, I mean, there were a few. Tokotronic is one of them. Udo Lindenberg, he's
Okay.
one of the most famous ones. You know,
Okay.
have heard
Yes.
of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's about it. So I
So
mean,
you weren't really into the Scorpions or Tangerine Dream, that kind of.
No. Yeah, let me think if there's any German bands who sang English. No, I mean it. As I said, it was the American and English ones mostly.
Right. Well, I've been more English. I guess you could call me Anglophile. I've followed more British bands, English bands, than I
Mhm.
just think they put more heart um, into the music and than the American counterparts.
Mhm.
There's a few. I like a lot of the older, 70s and 60s, American, but newer stuff, no. I tend to like the more European, British
Mhm.
music. Yeah.
By the way, do you know Rachel Yamagata?
Yes, and I was going to
Yeah.
ask about that too.
Okay. Yeah.
You enjoy working with her?
Yes. I mean, she is half Japanese. However, grew up in America, so she is 100% American from her attitude and being, if you will. That's what is my impression. She lives in a cabin in Woodstock, and she seems to be this, I mean, reborn Melanie, right?
Right.
But and she is very popular, much more than me in Korea and Asian countries. And we once had a joint concert in Korea, and that's when we met, and we became friends. And I had at least these two songs where I thought I need a female voice, and who better than, I mean, it's because I once said that Paul Buchanan is my favorite male singer and Rachel Yamagata is my favorite female singer. I suppose along with Melanie and Sia, the Australian one.
Yes, yes, yes.
And yeah, so I'm very lucky to have worked with her on these two songs, Headstone and Untouchable. Did you listen to them? Do you know these songs,
I'm
these two songs?
I'm going to. I'm going
Okay.
to. I
Yeah.
promise you. I'm going to get up to speed. Who are some other people that you've worked with over the years that you've enjoyed working with, or that you maintain a good working relationship with?
Yeah, the thing is, I've never really done any real collaboration. For example, I mean, Untouchable and Headstone was my songs,
Hmm.
and then I wrote a couple of songs for a Taiwanese and one Korean singer, some acts. But so what I never did ever was write a song with somebody else, like John and Paul. And don't really know how that should work because hey, it's mine, it's my emotion. you know, leave me alone. But I mean, it's a different attitude towards songwriting, and I think nowadays a lot of songwriters they meet for these camps and then they throw in ideas. I mean, I think, for example, "You're Beautiful" by James Blunt. There's about six songwriters who wrote it. I mean, that's one example that I looked up, and so a song is too personal for me to share. So that's the thing. I've never really um, put much effort in these collaborations.
Right. What about going back to Rose working with Gareth Jones, the producer on that? I mean, I find it interesting that he, had worked with like Depeche Mode and Erasure, that kind of upbeat electronic sound, and then he's producing yours. Was he trying to instill uh, a lot of that into your album?
No, no, not really. The thing is that he loved Kitty Yo, and Kitty Yo, the label was, I mean, as I said, Peaches Gonzalez and the German electro artists on that label, um, and that was his thing. However, I was this. I mean, I was signed and suddenly people thought I have to do anything with Peaches or Gonzales or the Berlin sound, which I never had. But because I was on the label, it was associated with that. And Gareth Jones wanted to work with a Kitty artist. And there I was. And so we recorded this album together. And then he always said, yeah, people will think this is the Gareth Jones touch when, for example, he did the Einstürzende Neubauten, you know?
Yes, yes, yes.
And so
You go on.
there's
Yeah.
this song, My Friends, where there's this horrible noise part, and it's practically 100% from my demo. I just had a keyboard drums put through a metal zone guitar distortion device. And so you know this part in My Friends, the one you cannot listen to and where you always have to use the volume.
Yeah, yeah.
And Gareth said, "Oh, people will think, yeah, Gareth Jones with the Neubauten, but and this other song, Daylight, the electro one, it's comes from I had bought a drum machine and just fooled around with it. So I mean, so every the Gareth Jones sounds actually are Maximilian Hecker ideas in that case, but yeah, I mean it was interesting because at first I thought I would be intimidated by a real producer, and then of course a real producer also is a human being and a friend. So that's the most important, by the way. So when I met Youth a couple of years later, I mean Martin Glover, I was not interested at all in what his vision he might have. I only thought, do I like him or not?
Right.
So because the most important thing is he's going to sound my record my vocals. So am I able to give it all when this guy is sitting there? So and if you don't want to pour your heart out to somebody, he cannot be your producer, you know.
That's a good.
So I mean that's why that Gareth Jones and Youth, who by the way are collaborators themselves, and I mean well, I learned that later. So that it always worked out, and it was the English way of come on, it's not that big a deal, nobody hears that, I mean that you screwed up that note. So they had this attitude of let loose, let it be. We have you can record in your toilet if you feel, it's all about the vibe. I mean, and so this it was this I don't know if it's typically English, at least those two were like that, like come on, uh, try to let go. No, not let go, let loose. What's the expression?
Yeah, let loose, let loose.
Free up. No, yeah.
Yep.
And of course I'm the opposite. I'm this control freak, this neurotic, at least about some things. And then these, I mean, especially Youth is a wonderful cliche producer in that sense, that how he appears as a old wise shaman, you know, with a deep voice and a cigarette, and then Max, and he's, then
Yeah.
little Max from his provincial hometown suddenly with a great shaman in the studio, like little kid who tries to hide that he's from a provincial town.
That's
And yeah, so
way back in what 2002. You opened for Lloyd Cole.
yeah.
What do you remember from that? What kind of did you have any talks with Lloyd Cole? What do you remember? What kind of guys he? What do you remember from that?
I mean, I remember that we didn't become friends. He was friendly, but we never really got together a lot. I mean, what I do remember is that he's a gourmet. how do you say? So he loves haute cuisine, you know.
Oh, okay.
So, and it was a tour of France. So, before every concert, we went to a restaurant with these stars, these Michelin stars, these rated ones, the real ones,
Hmm.
and had foie gras and all that stuff. So, and I mean, so there was not a lot of bonding besides that between me and him.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. Who have you opened for, or who have you played with on tour that you've really enjoyed? You know, maybe that you've got to know a little bit better.
yeah, I mean, Sean Marshall from Cat Power, of course.
Okay.
I mean, the funny thing is that I had a big crush on her as a teenager, more or less, or when I was at school. So I watched MTV 180 Minutes, I think it was called, and there was this black and white video of Nude as the News from Cat Power. And me and my friends thought, oh my God, who is that? It was some kind of Kurt Cobainish revelation, you know. Who is this woman? Who is this cutie, so to speak? And close to my hometown is one of the greatest European live clubs called Forum Enger. It's a club that is known for Nirvana played there and all these big acts before they became big. And so Kid Power played at that venue. So I was, I don't know, 18 or 17 or something. So we went to the sound check, and after the concert, we hung out, me and my friend, and finally dared to speak to her. And so something like a friendship that developed over the years started there. And I was this besotted young kid who went to a lot of Cat Power concerts when she was in Europe. And I remember traveling to Paris once with a bus, with these cheap overnight buses to Paris. And then I didn't have a hotel or anything. I went to this Cat Power concert, and I don't know, I was always lucky then because I think I was at front of the club, no ticket, no hotel, and I think Sean Marshall showed up on the street and said, "Hey, hi, come in, come in." And then I was backstage, and I mean, at that night I slept on the. I didn't really sleep. When the metro opened again, I went into the metro and kind of slept on the benches till my bus went back to Berlin. But so I kind of followed Sean Marshall, and at some point, um, so I have my Infinite Love song released, and I never I had an email account, but I didn't have a computer, so I went to the Kitty O office to check my emails, and I thought this is fake because it said Sean Marshall. And she said, "Oh, hi. Maybe you remember me. I discovered your music, and I don't know. It's I love it, and I try to communicate it to others. And maybe we play on the same bill one day." And I thought, is this for real? Is somebody making fun of me? Anyway, so a couple of years later, she managed to book me on one show in France in 2003. And yeah, and it's all history from there. My lips are sealed. No. Anyway, so yeah, that was an interesting joint concert. Yeah.
So you're not going to come out with a tell-all book about that. Your lips
No,
are.
it's no, it's already out there. She has a different name in the Rise and Fall.
Oh, okay. I see. That's good. Um, have you? How about playing America? Have you played any dates in America?
Yeah, I mean, I have played in San Francisco, Chicago, and New York. Because Goethe Institute, this is the Goethe, the writer, and they have these branches in all over the world, where they try to communicate German culture, and they sent me around the world in 2003 and 4. And so it was showcases, so to speak, organized by this German institution in Chicago, San Francisco, and New York.
Oh, okay.
And so I played, and I mean, I think the New York one was quite well. And I mean, is it called Other Music, a New York record store that used to be quite famous? And so and there's this story that, I mean, it's not a story. I was in some sort of New York Times end of the year thing, you know. So I was on this top 10 list.
Top 10, your first album, yeah.
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 However, I still think to this day that it's not top 10, and then I'm amongst them, but I'm amongst the top 10 of one of the journalists, Neil Strauss, by the way, who became famous later for his pickup books. Do you know Neil Strauss?
No.
He wrote this book about pickup techniques and how the world of picking up women. That's interesting fact. But he used to be a journalist for the New York Times, and I think that, I mean, it's always quoted as was amongst the top 10, but I think that, let's say, 10 journalists gave their top 10 list to the New York Times, and so there might have been 10 journalists on one page, and I was amongst the 10 of one of the many journalists with their favorite albums. Anyway, so I had some sort of a following in the USA at some point, or in New York, I don't know. So that's why the concert at Tonic, no, not Tonic is a club, is it? Tonic? No, anyway, it was quite good. Yeah.
I guess you've never had any plans or thoughts about playing Dallas, Texas at all.
Oh my,
Um,
I love to play anywhere
yeah.
when there is any chances. Of course, I think Michael said, of course, him being American, why not play in the USA? But I mean, it depends on the situation, and I hope at some point, of course. I mean, my first real girlfriend is from Texas.
Oh, is that right? Is that right?
Yeah. I met her
Oh,
online as well. Yeah.
interesting. What part of Texas, can I ask?
I don't know, but she moved to New York, and that's where I met her. So I'm not familiar with Texas, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, it would be nice, but the types of groups that come through Dallas is a very ultra conformal
Yeah.
city, you know, music wise, and they're a bunch of crap, basically, that come through here, and some of the same bands over and over and over that you don't want to go see anyway. It's
Yeah.
very few and far between that will get somebody very interesting or alternative,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
through here. But you might check into that.
Yeah.
The Chameleons that I mentioned before, lead singer Mark Burgess, he came through here, it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, an area called Deep Ellum. I don't know if you've ever heard of it in Dallas, but that's where you would probably play. And he just played at a little dive, hole in the wall place, but it was a good set. I think a lot of people got exposed to him that way. They've never been exposed, but but mostly it's a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
Dallas is not a music city.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a money city. It's a place where people move money, but it's not an arts and culture type.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No. So, but you might talk to Michael and
Yeah.
see if there's a gig or about that. But another thing, wow, we're over 2 hours. That's cool. That's cool. It doesn't seem like it. Does it seem like it to you?
No, but I think at some point I have to take a certain medicine. It's antibiotics. It's not a big deal, but
Okay.
so it's after. I mean, I should probably take that medicine in about 20 minutes. So.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's combined with eating something. That's the problem. But
Ah. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Your living situation. Do you have any pets or anything?
No, and yeah, Do you? I mean,
Yeah, we have the one Max. Remember, I told you
oh, right. Okay.
the dog, the Labradoodle.
Yeah. No, no,
So,
I don't even have plants.
okay. Well, I don't have plants, me and my wife both, because we don't have a green thumb. They would
Yeah.
die. If
Yeah.
we tried to grow anything, they would just die. So,
Mm.
yeah, we don't do that. But, so you just live by yourself?
Yeah. Mm.
Okay, okay. That's not such a bad situation. I mean, you're comfortable. That's
Yeah.
what it,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what it's. But let's see, real quick. I look like unprepared here for sure. What? Um, one thing I wanted to say about especially Rose. I think it's more accomplished an accomplished album than Infinite Love Songs. I do. I think it's Infinite Love Songs, more of a pop album, I think,
Hmm.
more multi instruments that you use. And I like the piano based material on Rose. I like
Hmm.
those a lot. Several of the songs introducing the song with just the piano and your vocals.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I really enjoyed that. And I know a lot of people, they have a short attention span and they really can't get into stuff that's too soft or too slow. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? But I
Yeah.
I I truly enjoy
Yeah.
that kind of material on that. But I was going to ask you, what was it? Um, um, as far as multi instrument, um, which was more difficult for you to learn, play the piano or the guitar?
Yeah. I think the piano because the guitar I don't really play, do I? It's just chords, you know. I'm not this kind of lead guitarist who knows how to play. I mean, I do strumming and picking, but I'm not a guitar player in that sense, you know. I'm a rhythm guitarist. I'm a John Lennon. I mean, if I play a solo, I do it with one finger, you know.
Well, I
Um,
think on polyester, it's some nice guitar work on that. So
Yeah, I mean the picking, the folk picking. That's of course, yeah. By the way, Infinite Love Songs is my 8-track demo with re-recorded vocals and remixed. So that's of course why it sounds different than Rose, for example.
okay,
I mean, it's I think if Infinite Love Songs is the sound is not as broad, you know.
right. Um, okay, so you said, do you think it's easier for a person who has learned the piano than to switch to guitar than to play guitar, or vice versa?
What do you mean?
Oh, let's say someone has taken piano lessons and they've mastered piano. Do you think it's easier for them to pick up guitar after they've learned piano?
I think it depends on how they approach the instrument. Because if you play the piano and know about the chords, I mean, then you'd think in chords as well, and it might not be a problem with the guitar. But if you think of piano as single notes, I mean, when I learned the piano, it was you have this sheet, and you don't think in chord structures. And so you think, oh my God, this note and then this, rather than um, getting this chord structure first. And so anyway, so if you're someone who improvises and plays their own stuff, then it's all the same. I mean, then yeah, it's more that approach. If you're creative, or if you're just if you're creative as a performer.
Got you. All right. Well, you know what? Unless you have something else to add because you need to take your medicine, um,
Yeah.
and I need to. So let me see if I can guess this right. It is is it about 9 o'clock your time?
No, it's 6:30.
Oh, okay. Oh, you know what? I'm looking at the 2 hours, and I was going 7 hours from the clock up here. Okay, no, six. Yes, that's right. That's right. I was looking at the wrong monitor up here. Okay, so 6:30. Okay, well you need to eat anyway. Did you have plans tonight?
No. I mean, tomorrow is my day off. I mean, I don't have a job, of course, but the writing on the book is a job, and so I have 5 days and then one off and five. So, and I take the day off always because I think it's I prevent any kind of burnout, because if you're on I'm always very tense in the morning, and I don't sleep. I sleep better if I have a day off. Anyway, so
Right. What is the your favorite time of the day?
sure. I don't know. Depends on the day. As a but I feel more relaxed in the afternoon and evening, at least. I mean, because for 2 years now I write on the book, and every morning I feel tense and anxious, and so I need to prove to myself. Oh, warte mal. Hallo? Ja, Daniela, ich hab gerade ein Interview hier mit auf Skype, und ich rufe aber zurück bald, ne? Jo, danke. So, warte mal. Hallo? Ja, ich habe noch das Interview. Jo. So.
Two more quick questions, and I'll let you. Speaking of favorites, what's your favorite season of the year?
Oh, I think it's autumn. Or is it fall or autumn in USA?
Fall, same, fall, same. Yeah,
Yeah.
mine too. I love when you get a lot of the trees there changing colors, the leaves, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I prefer to wear I don't know, the North Face jackets and beanies rather than this summer atmosphere with flip flops and sweating. So
Oh yeah, and Texas, I don't know if you've ever heard, it's almost unbearable. It's too hot in the summer. So I like fall and winter, fall and winter.
Yeah.
But we don't have very many long seasons. It's either all summer, and then a little bit of fall, little bit of winter, little bit of spring, and then long summer again. So
Yeah.
We don't have those definite times and seasons. And then what is your favorite meal? Favorite meal?
Sure.
Speaking of eating, yeah.
Hard to say. I mean, I'm not that much into food, but I think I think French cuisine is quite good when it's done well. So steak frites, and yeah, Lloyd Cole, foie gras. No, but and I mean a really good hamburger. I mean a real one, not these ones where they've anyway, where they put the meat through the thing in the restaurant. You know what I mean? These kind of real burgers. I mean, I don't know. I think in the USA you have more of the real ones, but in Germany you have a lot of fake burgers where they just have these things and from the fridge, and then anyway. So yeah, but I usually eat healthy. But if I could choose, then perhaps a real good cheeseburger.
And then your favorite drink, favorite drink. It could be alcohol or non-alcohol. It doesn't matter.
Sure. I don't know. I only drink water and tea nowadays. I mean, the last time I drank Coke was probably 10 years ago. So, I mean, of course, these kind of drinks might taste better, but and alcohol, maybe four times a year I have a drink. A binge drink, to be honest. That's why it's only so few times, because it's so unbearable, the hangover, that I don't manage to drink more often than 4 times a year,
Right.
more or less. Because
I haven't had a drink of alcohol since 2008, I believe it.
yeah,
So I used to be pretty heavy into that. But yeah, good for you that you're doing the healthy thing. What do you eat mostly? Are you a vegan? Are you?
No. I mean, I eat meat sometimes, but I mean, I try to eat healthier. I mean, fruit, what's it called? Vegetables. I eat porridge in the morning. You know, yeah, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, but I don't really cook myself. So I mean, that's the irony of it. I mean, I eat deep frozen food when it comes to lunch, you know, because the only time I eat warm, but of course it's not a pizza, but it's those deep frozen stuff which is better than its reputation. You know what I mean? For example, I think if it's vegetables deep frozen, then it's practically the same as if you. At least that's what I hope. But I cannot cook. I mean, I would eat very healthy, but I cannot cook. I never did it, and it takes time. I don't have any time for standing there for an hour, you know, in a kitchen.
Well, thank goodness my wife is an excellent cook, so I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about. Do you have a lot of delivery, a lot of like food delivery?
No.
You go to the store. You go to the store and
no.
Okay, then you get what you want, that kind of thing. We have a problem with here. We do order some of them, and some of the delivery. It seems like they're half and half. They get the orders right about half the time, you know. So it's probably better to go get it yourself anyway. You know, and you pay for the convenience in it. You know, that surcharge that they get you on. But okay, well, excellent. I mean, I think it went really well. What do you think?
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah. And thanks to Michael again. He must have said something decent about me. I don't know. He must have. I don't know. I guess I mean, he must not have said anything bad about me, you know. And thanks for looking at the my site with the interviews, that kind of thing too.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see how this goes. Like I said, this is the first time I've recorded. I guess it's going to save it, right? I mean, it'll save it in Skype, the interview. I mean,
I've not done it before, but I mean, what else would this mean that you recorded? I mean, I see it myself here, the red dot. So I mean, it should end up somewhere. Or maybe you have to call Mark Zuckerberg and kiss his ass in order to receive it now. I don't know. How does this work?
Right. So I'll figure that out. But thanks, Maximilian or Maxie.
Thank you. Yeah.
You know, for this and taking the time out and for meeting and just doing this. You know, I mean, better than I expected, I must say. And thank you for talking. I'm glad you're long-winded.
Thanks a lot.
I'm glad you like to talk too.
Yeah.
So have a good rest of the evening.
You too. Yeah.
Good rest of the weekend. And we may be talking to you again. I don't know, but I'll definitely email Michael and tell him thanks for hooking us up on this.
Yeah.
Too.
Okay.
And
thank you.
Cheers to you. Okay.
Yeah.
And best wishes.
Thank you. You too.
And I'm definitely gonna get caught up on your back catalog. And
right.
And listen to some more, a lot more of your material too. So.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
So goodbye, no?
Okay. Goodbye. I gotta figure out how to turn this off now.
Okay.
Okay. I'm gonna go like this.